Okay. Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Suzette and I'm redefining my 60s on my own terms. So welcome. If this is your first time, please feel free to send me a comment. What's your name? What's your age? What brought you to this page? I promise you, I always respond, and it's really me. As of late, I have been noticing that my self-definition has been growing quite a bit as I approach 65. You know, you start thinking when you get into your 60s, there's nothing else for you to do. There's nothing more for you to learn. It's just about, having fun and all of that. Well, my 60s have really been ushering me into a greater understanding of some things that I have needed to settle inside of myself that I didn't even know needed to be settled. One of those things is people pleasing. And when you think about people pleasing, you think about, caring about what people think. You think about, putting your needs and everything on the back burner for other people and all of that. And it always seems to have a very negative, very victim-like definition. But what I have been noticing is just how deep people pleasing really runs. And I would dare say, I don't think there's anybody on this planet who has not wrestled with people pleasing. Even when we're children and we're born into families, one of the main things that we want as little children is to please our parents. We want them to be proud of us. We want them to love us. We want them to prefer us, to favor us. And I think that it births us also into a world where there are definitions already at play, definitions that have already been sanctioned by those that have come before us, and they are rehearsed, rinsed and repeated, regurgitated, force-fed into us, programmed into us, even when we're too little to even know who we are. And one of the things I had to really realize is that I have been trying to live up to definitions that were never mine. They were definitions about the world, definitions that society had in place, politically correct definitions, definitions about what you ought to do, should do. All these different definitions, what's important, what's not important, what everybody ought to know, what you ought to know, what you ought to have figured out. All these things are from definitions that came from other people. And the challenge for me, as well as the liberation for me, has been really allowing life to life me and joy to guide me into a better understanding of who I am and what definitions align with that and what definitions don't. And finding the courage and the inner fortitude to put those definitions aside and don't pick them back up, right? And so I wanted to really talk even more deeply and go even more deeply into the internal terrain of this whole people-pleasing thing that is being deconstructed, being deprogrammed, detoxed, exercised, if you will, from my being, so that I can be more truly alive, so that I can feel more purposeful and more fulfilled. Some things that I thought about were success, worth, value, worthiness, enoughness. I have grappled with those at different times in my life, and they have manifested in different ways. But when I peeled it back, everything seemed to go back to the basic building blocks of what success is, what is worth, what makes me worthy, what makes me worth it, my own value, the value that I place upon myself and why, and my own enoughness. Am I enough? And if I am, why? What makes me enough? If somebody can tell me what makes me enough, then I'll stop falling for all the things that I think will make me feel like I'm enough. And I'll actually know it. Because if you're like me, you know those things that we run after, if they give any kind of value or bring any kind of solace, usually that only lasts for a little while. And all those doubts and fears and those parts of ourselves and parts of our worthiness that we haven't quite figured out yet will come roaring back in some way, shape, or form and provoke us, dare us to convince that part that doesn't feel like it's enough, give it enough evidence so that it will agree with you. And most of my life has been trying to find enough evidence of my worth, enough evidence of my worthiness, enough evidence that I'm enough to finally solve that nagging question that seems to always find its way through the soil and to the light in my whole self-concept, my whole self-definition. And I call that system the matrix. Sometimes I call it the system, but a girlfriend of mine named Carol had this wonderful thing. She said, I call it the matrix. And I'm like, you know what? Having watched the matrix, it's like, that's exactly what it is. It's this false mental and emotional construct that has been created in the minds and imaginations of men that we are reacting to or trying to live up to. Yep, I ended up writing it down. And this is not somebody else's definition. This is what I came up with when I was trying to determine what the system has been. What the system has been that I've kept bumping my head up against. And that's it. It's a false mental and emotional construct that has been created in my mind and imagination that men, and I mean mankind, place there that I'm reacting to or trying to live up to. And if you know what that's like, you know after a while, at first you feel pretty good. You feel like, hey, I did that, right? Your performance evaluation, your self-evaluation, you get the thumbs up that you did well, you complied, you met the standard. But if you keep living long enough, and if that standard does not come from a real pure and authentic place in you, it doesn't last. And you're back on that hamster wheel of trying to figure it out, how to gin it up, how to create it, how to manufacture your own enoughness. And you know what I think that enoughness is tethered to? Your own liberation, your own soul's joy. And so if the truth be told, I believe that even those that say they don't care what other people think are responding to something they heard, something they were told, something that hurt them. And they come up with this thing of, I don't care. But it is a pain response. It's a pain speaking, pain reacting aspect of people pleasing. Because when you already know who you are, there's nothing to fight against. There's nothing to fight for. You already feel like you're enough. There's nothing lacking in you. You don't have anything to prove to anybody. And so I very seldom have found anybody who has truly, 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 down to the marrow of their bones, been so free from people pleasing that it has not reared its ugly head. Whether it's in a family relationship, a work relationship, or a romantic relationship. And when I was doing a lot of relationship coaching, that came up so much. People that thought they had it all together, all it took was one failed relationship and them recalling how it all went down for them to start doubting their own worthiness and their own enoughness. They might have tried to play it off, but the truth was the more we dug deeply into the soil of it, at least those who were willing, we found that it was attached to something that happened inside of them way before Mr. Wrong or Mrs. Wrong came into their lives, right? So I was doing it too. And even though I felt called into this personal development space, I felt called to coach, I felt called to write, I felt called to speak, I kept called to connect with people musically. I felt called to something bigger than myself and to serve the world in my own unique way. There was still the saboteur. And the saboteur was my sense of enoughness, worth, and worthiness was still connected. It still was swimming in the amniotic fluid of the system, the matrix. And what I have found that's been happening within the last, I would say since 2022, has been me being excommunicated from the matrix. Everything that's happened in my life, everything has been working for my liberation, not against it. But I didn't know that was what was happening. So I thought it just meant I needed, if something failed or I crashed or I had a burnout, that just meant that I needed to become more informed. I needed to educate myself. I needed to be taught from somebody who knew more than I knew. I needed to figure out what it was that I was doing wrong. It was sabotaging even the beauty of the divine calling on my life, the beauty of being able to serve and to coach and to see people's lives transform was always upended by it not meeting an expectation that came with an internalized definition that I found most recently was never mine. I was trying to live up to something that God didn't give me, that God didn't say, but it was so much a part of my rearing, so much a part of my becoming, my growth. And we all are swimming in it. This world system, we all are swimming in the amniotic fluid of the world system. But I'm beginning to understand more so the passage in Scripture where Jesus says he was in the world, but not of it. Right? And I'm beginning to find out, yes, I live in this system. I was born into it, but I'm not of it. That means it does not dictate any longer my worth, my worthiness, or my enoughness. And you know what it was that helped to pull me from people pleasing to what I have called soul honoring? It was my assignment, my divine assignment that I was given when I had the grand mal seizure of burnouts. It's when you have this seizure where you kind of black out and your body stiffens, and then you start kind of going into this shaking or convulsing. That's what was happening inside of me. And that's what caused my burnout. It was the grand mal seizure of burnouts. I had exhausted myself, giving my last ditched effort to try to meet the demands and expectations of the system, the matrix, if you will. And it literally left me so bankrupt, I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to coach anymore. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to believe anymore. I didn't want to try anymore. I was done. I was absolutely done. I retired my coaching business. I started receiving Social Security, early retiring. I didn't care anymore. I didn't want to have anything else to do with it. If anybody mentioned coaching or mentioned speaking or mentioned any of that I used to do in the personal development space, I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to do anything. But this is something I've learned when you're called. Even if you resign to doing nothing, even if you close every door and bolt it and lock it with as many locks as you can, your purpose always finds a way to kind of sink in there and start tapping you on the shoulder. But you see, I didn't know how to answer it. I didn't know what to do because everything inside of me was bankrupt. I didn't even have the energy. I didn't even have the wherewithal. All I knew was I did not want to go back to running a business. I did not want to go back to that entrepreneurial space. I did not want to go back to the world system, doing it the way that I had been doing it, that literally almost took me out mentally and emotionally. That's all I knew. All I knew was that was not the right way. I didn't know what the right way was, but I knew that wasn't it. And I remember crying and praying and feeling like I was between a rock and a hard place because there was still so much inside of me. Still, and I knew it wasn't all done. I knew it wasn't over. I knew that life for me could not be sitting and watching TV all day. It couldn't be just going to the senior center for activities and coming home and watching TV. It couldn't be that. And as much as I love my family, it couldn't be just getting together with them. There was still something inside of me that wanted to serve. I just didn't know what it was. I didn't know how to go about it. I didn't know what to do. And I started just kind of praying, meditating, asking for answers, asking for help, asking for clarity. And 2 words came to my consciousness. And I truly believe it was God that said, choose joy. Now that sounds like to some, I get it. Have fun, do the thing, do what lights you up. But I had spent so much of my life trying to live up to other people's definitions and expectations that I didn't even know for myself what that joy was, what it actually would look like and feel like, how it would be practiced. For me, I didn't know. And even if I had glimmers of it, I could never hold on to it because of that need to live up to some expectation that I felt like I had not fully lived up to yet. So one of the things that I invited God to do was to show me, teach me how. How do I choose joy? What does it even look like for me? How do I know how to choose it? How do I know if it's joy? Because I had experiences where I felt satisfied, where I had laughed before, where I had felt happy or felt jovial or felt satisfied, where I wanted to pat myself on the back. But joy was different. Joy, from what I had been told, was something that came from the inside. But I didn't know how to connect with it. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what kind of priming I needed to do to connect with my soul's joy. And so it was quite tumultuous for a minute. It was very difficult for me. I couldn't figure it out. And what wisdom came up out of me was, start with the things that you like. What do you enjoy? And I realized I enjoyed travel, new adventures. I enjoyed new restaurants and coffee shops. I enjoyed tasting different reimagined foods. I liked something new, something exciting. I liked atmospheres. I was really into energy. You know how certain atmospheres in restaurants and coffee shops have an energy to them? And I didn't always have it in every one, but I recognized it when I was in the right place. And so I started saying, okay, when there's something that wells up inside of me, automatically, like a smile from my soul, or an inspiration or enthusiasm that comes from within me that I didn't manufacture, I didn't make happen, it is a natural response to something my soul recognizes. That was my way, my path of choosing joy. And my practice became putting myself in situations where I could feel that. Now, there was some learning curves with that, but at least I was making the effort. And after making the effort enough times, I was able to make certain connections. I began to see what aspect of new restaurants got that feeling, primed that feeling, evoked rather that feeling out of me. And so I started kind of looking for that in different things that I did and recognizing and noticing when it happened. When I smiled from my liver, when a chuckle came out of me from nowhere, when my eyes would just glisten with awe. You know that Tyra Banks called it schmeizing. When my eyes would naturally just do that. When I'd feel energized by something, I knew that was my soul's way of telling me I was on to something. I was on the path of joy. And you know what has happened since then? It's not only am I choosing joy, but joy is choosing me. I am finding myself in situations that are bringing me more and more of that feeling of joy. But there was still that nagging of, but is that all I'm supposed to do? Is that it? Is that all? And I'm learning that, wait, joy is enough. Joy is the pathway to service. Joy has to be the main foundational basic building block of whatever I do. And so if I do something and it doesn't evoke joy out of me, or if it doesn't or if it's not joy beckoning to me to follow it, then I know it's not the right thing. And so I've had to sit in it and normalize joy and allowing joy to take me wherever joy wants to take me. And most recently, joy has been what has taken me from people pleasing to soul honoring. That's the stake in the ground. There is no only doing this for a little while and then going back to life as usual. Because that was my inclination. It was like that part of me that didn't understand it, that didn't respect it, that didn't understand that this is the path. This is the destination. This, you have arrived. This is it. Joy, choosing joy. This is it. This is the answer. But that part of me, that people-pleasing part of me, that ego-driven part of me, was still looking for something else. Like, this can't be it. Okay, I've done it enough. Now it's time for me to do something else. Now it's time for me to serve. Now it's time for me to do something else with all this talent, with all these skills, with all this life experience. I'm supposed to be doing something more than this, right? And so in the next video, I'm going to share with you how joy led me to the next, I don't want to say project, but to a greater understanding of what that nagging thing was inside of me that knew there was more. And how my ego thought it was, okay, you've gotten enough joy, then let's go back to doing something that's worthwhile. But understanding how joy guided me to this blessed place and a way to serve that is like nothing I've ever given myself permission or even understood until it happened. So stay tuned, and if you like what I'm putting down, please like, share, and subscribe. I love reading your comments. I love interacting with you. I welcome them, and I look forward to more in the next episode. Take care.